So hi everyone, this is Glenn from Astro, and today I'm going to be stripping down my AZ GTI portable mount. Brilliant little portable mount this. Basically it's like a Star Adventurer, but it's fully go-to and guides on declination and RA, so it's really good. Recently my guiding figures have not been brilliant. It's still been okay, but they've been going up, and I found that when I've been trying to balance the rig, it's been a little bit stiff. The declination isn't too bad, but on the RA side it's definitely got stiff. So I'm going to strip it down and I'm going to check all of the attachments and have a look at re-greasing some parts. I'm not going to change any bearings. That could be done at a later date. If you wanted to sort of hyper tune this, you could get updated bearings and do that, and obviously you could follow this video on the dismantling, and rather than just re-grease bits, actually replace the bearings. So we're going to take it apart. Just one point, I changed the saddle. I've got an ADM saddle. It gives me a much better mount. Doesn't mark the dovetail bars. This is the original, so that would normally be on there, not with this black bit. That would be straight on. So the first bit I'm going to take off you won't have unless you've upgraded your saddle, but you'll just be removing the white bit that's there. So I'm going to keep all my deck parts over here together, and I'll keep all of my RA parts on the other side. Okay, so the declination clutch needs to come off. That just unscrews all the way. Now the small screws that hold the plastic cover on only screw into plastic, literally, so they're very easy to strip. I think I have stripped one from tinkering about before, so be careful with that. It's very easy to do. Okay, and then we can undo the plastic cover, and then what we've got is quite a lot of little connectors, so be very careful with the wires. So we've got a little plug there and a larger one here for the main cover. What I like to do at this stage is actually take a photograph of the layout of anything I'm sort of working on like this. I'm going to start off by stripping the declination out. So there's a little O-ring there, and there's a bearing here. There's a little roller bearing, so that'll be something we can clean and re-grease. So some of it's quite greasy already, so that's good, but we're definitely going to give everything a good clean and then a re-grease. I've actually got here, there's a small nut on here which we can undo, and this is part of the spring loaded part of the motor. Now Queeve the Lazy Geek did a video where he tightens this up to the point where the spring doesn't actually move. It's the worm is actually constantly pushed into the gear, and whether that's the right way to go or not, I am not 100% sure. I did have a look at it when I saw Queeve's video. I didn't see that it improved anything on the guiding, so I'm not 100% sure whether I'd recommend that or whether to have it spring loaded. I'm going to have a look at it and see what I feel sits best with it, because I did have a little play with it, and I'm sure it's the little adjustments I've done that have caused the tracking to go slightly out from what I was getting before. So there's a small spring here on this screw, so be very careful when you undo this small screw here, because this spring will ping it off. So get your finger on it, and then you don't want anything flying out. That's good, and we can then hopefully work the motor out. And then we've got a little plug there. Now be very careful when putting all of these plugs back in, because the pins are extremely small and fine. It's very easy to bend them. So what I'm actually going to do here, so I don't get confused where anything belongs, I'm actually going to put, because they're not going to be in the way, I'm actually going to put some of the screws back in the holes that they belong in. These are quite obvious, so I'm not too worried about them. They're two different sizes, but I'm just, you know, don't want to get lost with it. Okay, so it looks like this will lift off now. And that's another little washer there. I was wondering whether that was the other part of the roller bearing. So that'll all be given a good clean. And there's your friction plate for the clutch. So that we definitely want to avoid getting any grease on. Right, okay, just going to put that there. Okay, let's just give this a clean, because that's not supposed to be greasy. And I can see here that I've got, there's a sensor, obviously reads these bits in. It's got a massive blob of grease on it, so I wouldn't have said that was very good. So I'm just going to remove that little sensor now, and I'm going to see if we can clean that up gently and remove the grease that's sitting on top of it. I'm just going to keep those screws separate, but they look like they're the same, so we just move them apart. Okay, there's also a wire just under there, and that wire to me could easily rub on this rotating part, so I may reroute that the other side, because that doesn't look like it's in the right place. So I'll definitely be rerouting that. There we go. So that's the sensor for the declination. We'll put that over there as well. Okay, so this is the next bit we're going to get out. I mean, this doesn't feel too bad, but I bet you it could be better. So we've got some Allen bolts around the edge here before we can undo the main ring. I think from memory it's they're 3mm in size. They're very small, I know that. Is that too big? Well, let's put it this way, it don't fit, so it must be. Ah, that's the one I want. I'm not sure if it's 3mm or 2mm actually. 3mm. Yep, 3mm. Holding the spindle on the inside, this is undoing, and this will come off the top. And be very careful if you've got any of these little nylon shims, make sure you keep them. So this will be something else I'll clean and re-grease. Oh well, it came out. Not quite the way I would like to take it out, but it came out. Okay. There's quite a lot of grease sitting around all of this, so we'll just give it a little tidy up. So there's another nylon washer. Just give that a clean. And then we'll have a look at how everything is there. So that obviously sits on that side, so we'll have a look at that in a bit once we come to put everything back together and what needs greasing. So that's everything stripped out, and I will give this a proper clean and degrease, and then we'll look to re-grease everything to put it back together. Now there's a big chunk in that metal there. Luckily that nylon washer goes over the top. I'm not sure about the engineering quality. I wouldn't say it's the highest, but as I say, it works fairly well, so can't complain too much. So now we're going to look at taking apart the RA. Again, we've got a little connector to the motor down here, which we're going to just pop off. Okay, so I can see that there's another sensor here for the RA, and that this is on a plate. So, wondering whether to remove the plate or remove the board off of the plate. Let's see if the board will come with the plate. So we shall see. Okay. Good. The board actually is attached to the plate, so I wouldn't remove it off the plate unless you have to. These are very delicate little screws, so make sure your screwdriver's a good fit and be very gentle with them. And that lifts out there. Okay, so we want to remove this centre bit here, but I'm going to remove the motor first. So and if it's anything like the other one, the nut, oh, this time the nut came off. On the other one it actually took the spindle out. So I'll have a look at that in a moment, and I'll see if I can free that nut from the spindle, and so we can do them up independently. This washer's a bit fiddly. I'm not going to fully take that out yet because we've still got the spring loaded part. So I'm just going to undo that before I put my finger on the spring, so that if when it's undone it doesn't suddenly ping and disappear. That's good. Take this centre pin out. I'm quite happy I know where that one lives. That one seems to have two washers on it. This should lift out. I'm looking there. It looks like there's a groove there. There's grease in it. I hope the groove was... oh yeah, it is actually a specific groove to make space for that motor. So that's good. Okay, we'll clean that up in a minute. Right, so we want to remove the RA part. It looks like it comes out from the bottom plate, so we need to undo this top bit. So again, that looks like this will be the same as before, which is a 3mm locking pin. So just loosen that off, and okay, and then we want the other side, so we're going to spin that. Now the RA is spinning quite nicely there. It wasn't before. I think the motor was actually engaged a bit with the worm drive, and it was stopping it from spinning. Oh, now that just lifted off. There is a thread there, but it doesn't look like the thread is available anymore. We'll have to have a look at that. So we've got another little roller bearing here. So these are the bearings, if you wanted to, you could replace. I wouldn't like to say how high quality these are. I wouldn't have thought they were a particularly high standard, but you know, they do the job. So, but if you wanted to replace them, I'm sure you could source that size and get them replaced. I'm not really sure what size they are. This is a little bit awkward, so it's got to come up square. Let me just put that on. That's the other side, isn't it? So let's just try and keep that married up. That's it, that's that one. So this has actually got a little screw here holding this down, and then it's got like a ring that goes over the top of that. So we just undo this screw. A little bit unusual, because the other one was screwed in differently to that. And that should lift off as well. There we go. So we'll put the electrics over there so they're out of the way. Let's have a look at it. It's another washer there that I've got, and that came out from the bottom there. Okay. I'm assuming now that this will come away. Oh, and there's another big bearing there. Okay. Now this one just has the bearing in the centre. This one actually has a large roller bearing as part of it. So, okay, and there's your bit of friction plate there, which I'm not sure why you would ever. That's got a lock with that to turn that, so that's what that friction bit is for. So that's got to be tight enough on there so that that doesn't slip. Okay. Right then, so that's everything stripped down. This is the declination. Let's have a look in there. Right, I'm going to take this off as well. So this will just literally unscrew. I'm actually going to put that back in so I know how it lives. Right, and that basically is my AZ GTI stripped. So have a little look at all the parts. Okay, I'm near the end of the cleaning up process. I didn't bother to completely degrease everything. Now you can do that, and I know that some of the mounts that come from China can have a very thick gloopy grease, very sticky grease in them. Now these don't seem to have that, so just by really wiping all the excess grease off with some paper towel, has got everything sort of like nice and clean looking. There's no excess blobs anywhere, and then I can re-grease, and because there's still a very fine layer of grease on everything, everything should be okay. So if you do decide though to completely degrease everything, just make sure you're very careful to get everything completely re-greased, because obviously what you don't want to do is have extra wear. I did notice there was a fault with this. So this spindle here, you have this locking nut on the top for the RA, and this actually was just being held on by the 2 Allen bolts either side, and it looks like the thread itself is a little bit, well, it's either not been cut properly or it's been damaged at some point, maybe in assembly. So this was actually just slipping straight onto the spindle and not really tightening up. So I haven't got the ability to recut any threads or anything, so what I've done is I've wrapped some plumber's PTFE tape around the thread that's there, and this now actually screws on, and so it's just taken up whatever damage there was in that thread. So a little repair there that I've had to do. So hopefully that will help, because I did notice that when the clutch was undone, there was a bit of movement on the RA. So I'm hoping that that's going to get rid of that, which will be good. Okay. So we need to start putting it back together. This bearing here, this roller bearing, needs to be greased. You can then drop that in there. We'll just take the top bit off, and the other side greased. That's good. Just going to spend a moment just working that grease in with my finger. Okay, this is the bit that goes in the bottom. So this edge here goes on this friction edge here, so I'm going to make sure that there's definitely no grease on that edge. And there's proof I haven't grown up yet. I still can't undo a child-proof lid, which is great, because growing old is inevitable, growing up is an option, as I like to say. Okay, that's a nice clean edge now, with no grease deposits. And that sits on there. Okay, so this now should go inside. Now let's have a feel. A little bit of movement there, so not in the centre. So we need that in the centre. Let's get that there. Okay. So this went right to the bottom, and this actually locates everything. That there will locate everything centrally. That's great. That's gone in. Oops. Pull that out. Let's just get that back into place, and that sits in there. So that bearing goes to the bottom. We then have the RA locking pin and clamp there. We'll just do them up a little bit. Okay. And this is what it basically locks up onto. And then this then goes in. And sits there, and then we have the bearing on top. So we're just going to do that. Going to grease this side of the bearing. Make sure the grease is worked in. I'm just going to wipe the excessive blobs away because we don't want them to get in the way of anything else. We'll just slide that on top there. Take the top plate off. And we've just got to grease that top bearing. Goes on top there. Okay, we then do believe place this. This goes on first, doesn't it? So this locks on underneath. So what we need to do now is hopefully the small repair I did to the packing the threads out a bit will help, and this will actually, rather than just slip down, will screw onto the top. It's just slightly wonky. There we go, that's going on nicely. And with this in place, get these grub screws done up. Okay, so that's that gear back in, and then this just slips under there. We've just got these 4 screws to gently do up, so okay, so we're going to put the deck motor back in. So this slides underneath this here. Make sure you get that right, you don't want to be clamping it down on there. So this is the main bolt, and that swivels on that. So we just get this located, and we just won't do anything up just yet. We'll just see how it all sits, and then we'll tighten things down and make adjustments. So this can go on. Washer and nut. This can go on. I'm just doing it till the slack's gone, and then we've got the screw here, and there's a spring. What I'm going to try and do is catch the, oops, that didn't quite go to plan, because it would be the easiest way I think of locating. Right, so I'm through the spring. What I've got to do now is just angle this up, and it worked. Okay, so we just pull that down. So the spring is located on there. If I try and pull this away, it won't have it, and that'll be because this is too tight. I'm just going to loosen this till it allows this to move back and forth. Just going to loosen this half a turn. Okay, so now I'm going to replace the cover, which also holds the circuit board. So just very gently locate the screw holes. Good. So this is the control plug for the RA motor, so I'm just going to very gently line that up and push that home. So just a point of note, be very careful. This wire actually became detached from the circuit board, but luckily I've got a soldering iron and I'm not too bad with it, so I managed to put that back. But you don't really want to be getting into soldering stuff. Okay, so this plug needs to go back in, and that clicks in there. This is for the other motor, and that's the DEC side. Right, so that's the RA side put together. It's nice and smooth. Do the clutch up, that's good. Now, one thing I wanted to look at was this, and I've got the motor pushed in, so what I'm going to have to do is run it and see whether or not there's any binding. If there is, I'll have to release that a little bit, so I won't be putting the main cover on just yet. Okay, so we're looking at putting the DEC side back together now. So I took this apart first a while ago, so I've got to try and remember how to put it back together. So it looks like well, most of this here, I've put that back on there. That's the bit with the grip, and this is the one that has the circle. Right, so you've got the plastic washer that sits over there. That's not bad, but I think I would be inclined to grease this. This has got no bearing as such. So this, I'm definitely going to run a bit of grease over. Okay, so that's going to pass through the other side. That feels a bit better now. Okay. So from the other side, we have this washer which goes in there, and then this clamp which holds everything together. And do this up. And again, we don't want any movement. That's open. Right, there's movement there. That's the movement. The whole thing moves, so we're just going to get that to the point where there's no movement. And then we need to just tighten this up. That feels a lot better. So everything back in place there, and we can now put the sensor back. Now, what we had before was this wire was actually going underneath this, and I felt that the root of it would actually be better if it was not underneath it. Maybe the other side there. So that would be screwed on there. And that will be there like that, and that should allow that to still turn. And I think the wire being the other side is a much better idea. I didn't like the wire going underneath that. I thought that was a potential for some rubbing, etc. So we shall put it the other side. Get these two screws located. Make sure everything turns in. No noises, so nothing's rubbing or touching, which is great. I'm much happier with that wire running that side rather than this side and underneath that. Okay. This is the deck, and that plugs in that bottom one. We'll just push that wire out of the way. That's alright, that looks good. Okay. So next job, we need to put this metal cover back. Two more diddly screws to intricately place back in the holes. One. It's supposed to be a magnetic screwdriver, but its magneticness has left me. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, let's get that on there. That's okay. So that's that all back in. That's good. Okay, we've now got the gear here. Next job is we've got to get the motor back in. Now we've got a spring this side. This slides in like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to locate the pivoting bit, and we'll think about the spring and the other bolt. Not very easy. Let's get hold of that spring. Pull it over. That's good. And then this one we left in place. I'm just going to do that up. It's in a good position. So what I'm going to do here is just nip that. That's good. Right. Now, the spring is quite strong and it does pull it back and it pulls that in. Now what we have to decide is, do we want the spring to do its job or do we want to just lock it in? I've got a feeling that locking it in is the best thing. So for me, that's now locked in. Right. Before I rebuild any other part of this, I'll put this on here, and we need to give this a little test run on the rig with the clutches done up and then the clutches undone, and make sure nothing is binding. So let's go and do that. So I'm just having a feel with the clutches off, and everything is, if I just undo that, everything is nice and smooth and exactly the same with the RA. Everything's nice. So I'm going to do those clutches up. I've just literally temporarily put on the old saddle just because I've just held it on with 2 screws, because that one, it's you've got to bolt the top bit on as well, so it's a bit more work. Okay, so we're going to just connect this part back on so we have control over the mount, and then we're going to slew it and see if everything's moving with no binding. So we just plug this little fiddly one in first. And when I say fiddly, I mean fiddly. And then this one is the holes are at the top and the pins are at the top. And so they don't give you a lot of slack, but we just need to get this plugged in. There we go. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to undo this clutch here. I'm just going to roughly just make sure the wires are all running where they should be. Just going to put this on very rough and put the declination clutch back on. Everything feels nice and smooth. So what we're hoping for now, and so the clutch is locked, the deck is locked, that's on rough. So what we can do now is get some power to the unit. Just turn it around. Once you get power to the unit, you get your flashing light, so that means we can connect to the Wi-Fi. So we're looking for SynScan. There it is. And then we go to the SynScan Pro app, and we're going to connect to this mount. Equatorial, and it's saying it's connected. And now you can see whether things are going to work. So there's the deck turning. So I'm literally just going to turn that through 360 degrees to make sure there's no binding. So that's all good on the deck side. So now we're going to look at the RA. I think you'll all agree that doesn't sound right at all. So something's quite amiss there, so we shall take the cover off and see if we can see what's going on. get that away from everything. I think we can just, can't quite get it out because of the plate there, but it's not connected anymore, so let's have a look. I've got a screw here that's just basically saying, I'm not coming out, you can't get me. And I can, and I will. Okay, so we place this screw. We just got to try and find out what exactly was going on there. Maybe the worm drive wasn't fully engaged, or maybe it was too tightly engaged is a possibility. So I'm just going back on with this, make sure there's nothing touching. Okay. We need to push that up. Take the tension off the spring. Okay. We're still okay. So, something to do with the tension we put on this. So we obviously put way too much tension on the nut, I can only assume, and that was causing a problem, and I think it was the worm drive we could actually hear. So let's just do that up, take the slack out of it, and there you go. So it's not happy there, so let's just undo that. That is just peculiar, because that just doesn't like it, does it? That is just weird. Okay, now we need to do a full revolution and make sure it's not binding. It seems okay now. Make sure that's in the camera. Let's just take that back a bit. Okay, that's excellent. There's no binding there on the full revolution, so that's really good, and the strange noise has gone. So I just think that was part of the tension, either too tight or too loose. I'd say it was too tight because it was when I loosened it, it was okay. Put the deck clutch back in, that holds it quite nicely in place actually. Now, these bottom ones in first. Okay, and last but not least, I'm going to put the ADM saddle back on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this back onto my tripod, and I'm going to put my scope on it, and then we'll give it a slew test. Okay, so we make sure we're connected to the SynScan, which we are, and then we want the SynScan app already connected, and we can slew the mount. Everything's moving quite smoothly. And all that's left is to test it at night and make sure that it's tracking, and with a bit of guiding, hopefully getting much better numbers. So this was the next time I was able to use the mount, and I was actually imaging the Pinwheel Galaxy. I'd done a new calibration and got everything running on the mount, and the tracking was much improved. I had a lot easier time balancing the rig because everything on the declination and RA were a lot smoother, and the tracking, now that I've done a new calibration, is running really well. What I will do, however, is run a guide assistant shortly and try and improve it even further, but I'm very happy with that. To be under 1 arc second is brilliant. We're sitting at like, well, almost, it's 0.8, so I'm very happy with that. As I say, previous to doing the service on this mount, I was getting it was sitting around 1.5 up to 1.8, and sometimes even peaking out at 2 arc seconds. Now at 360mm focal length, that wasn't really causing me any major issues. The odd sub would have slight movement and misshapen stars, and obviously you want to get the best guiding you can. This makes me feel much happier. The guiding's a lot more solid, and it's bringing me back some really nice images, so I'm very pleased I've done this. I'm sure that you can go even further if you wanted to buy some upgraded bearings, like some ceramic bearings or SDK ones. I'm sure you could improve things further. If my mount starts to go down in performance again, or the either of the axes start stiffening up, what I will most probably do is replace the bearings next time, as well as just taking it apart and giving it a clean and a re-grease so that it gets the full Monty. But at the moment I'm really happy with this. If you do have any questions about what I've done, please let me know in the comment section below, and I do hope that the video helps you in some way with any servicing or things that you want to do to your own mount. The AZ GTI is a brilliant little go-to mount, and with a little bit of care, it will serve you well. So I'd like to wish you all clear skies, and until next time, take care.